Yes, this is wildlife biologist Eric Orff with New Hampshire Fish and Wildlife. In this week's Nature Notes, it's Monday, August the 20th. So what's happening now for wildlife around here? Lots of different things. I was up to my camp in Maine over the weekend, in central coastal Maine. And as I was getting ready to leave and locking things up, I kind of walked out near the storage shed, and I could see the alders were quivering. Well, something was going on there. So I took a walk over and took a peek into the alders, and it was filled with warblers. Warblers that were antsy. They were dancing from branch to branch. And certainly indeed, this time of year, the birds become restless. They are feeding heavily. They become anxious. They're anxious to migrate south. And some birds, like swallows, have already begun their movement. But many of the birds are just now kind of winding up, feeding as heavy as they can, and they want to head south in a few weeks, or even a few days, I suppose. And you know, the first killing frost here, which could happen in 2 or 3 weeks or a month, but not long from now, will kill off many of the insects that they feed on. So yes, now is the time to enjoy the wealth of insects and food and build a layer of fat and get ready for the long journey to some southern island or South America. So you will see restless birds now. I happened to notice the crabapple tree out here on the other north side of my property. It has some apples. It was a lot of blooms this spring, and quite a few apples had set, but some have fallen off. But I noticed a lot of the other wild apple trees about are, oh, there's a tree frog calling. We've had a tree frog calling here the last 5 or 6 days. So the apples are pretty numerous on the wild apple trees. And I was thinking, this is an odd year, 2019. That means it's an apple year. So when I was the first New Hampshire Fish and Game black bear biologist, beginning in the late 70s, and I would annually tabulate the bear kill and look over the forms. Well, one of the questions on the bear kill form, so every licensed hunter, when he kills a bear, must present the bear to a registration station, or since the mid-80s, to a conservation officer to be properly tagged and recorded. But one of the questions on the bear kill form is, what was the bear feeding on when killed? So that means if the bear was in an apple orchard, you would write down apples, or in a beech stand, you would write beeches. And for a couple of decades at that point, if you looked at the long-term data, you would see that on odd years would be apple years, and even years would be beech years. Of course, there were a few bears in central and southern New Hampshire at the time, so acorns weren't really reported all that often because there's not many acorns north of the White Mountains. So, but this year, thinking of acorns, seems to be a banner year for acorns as well. Everything eats acorns, not just bears, but wild turkeys and deer and mice and chipmunks. And they are all scrambling to fatten up on the acorns and get ready for probably a long winter ahead. So yes, everybody eats acorns. So this is appearing to be a good year for acorns. Well, what else is happening? We've had a heat wave the last few days, and certainly this is drying out some things. I did notice coming back from Maine the other day, on the drive there's a big wetland, and there were a few swamp maples that were already showing some color. So quite often by late August, the swamp maples, red maples that are in these wetlands, begin to show a little color. What has not happened this last week, which is, here it is the 20th, normally by now, some years, the nights begin to cool down a lot. That hasn't happened, so that's kind of different this year. We're not having the cool 50-degree evenings where you throw open all the windows, and the next day you can shut the windows and capture the cold air for the night. But that's just not happening. So yeah, right now I'm still seeing quite a few monarchs. That's a good sign. They're still milling about. And certainly make sure you get outside and look for some of the restless birds yourself.